One of the mistakes I've made is I've recruited really good talent in before, but it was for a future state of the org and they couldn't actually operate in the current state of the org. There's a lot of dynamics to think about as it pertains to like, what does your organization look like and how does this person fit or not fit? How do you structure questions around those types of things?
Welcome back to the Sterling Family Law Show. I am your host, Tyler Dolph, and we are continuing our hiring series. Today, we're going to talk about the culture interview and why it's so important to get this right and use it as a pass or fail to the next step in the interview process. We have a great episode for you today, and I really hope you enjoy it. All right, gentlemen, we are back talking about our hiring process, and we have a three-step process here at our agency where we do a culture interview, we do an operational interview, and then we have our final interview. Today, we are talking about that first interview, the culture interview. Are they a right fit? Should they move forward in the process? JP, talk us through our process when it comes to the culture interview.
Yeah, so this is an interview that's executed by our talent acquisition and our people ops team. And there you've passed the sniff test on the resume and the application you're in. And now we want to find out who you are as a person in a live conversation. And so this is a fairly short interview, usually it's about 20, 30 minutes. And it's not specifically about the function of the job. That happens later. That's in the operation interview, which is more technical and skill specific. This one is very much about who you are as a person. And is this a person who we want to continue talking to because we feel like they would be a net positive add to the business from a cultural standpoint?
So it's like, do we like this person and can we work with them?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I would be careful on the like portion. It's like, do we think this person will improve my business from a cultural standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, one thing one of the trainings we've done internally recently is skill versus will. Like, this is not a skill interview. This is more personality and will interview. Like, how are they as a human? And like, are they going to match the drive that you need for the role? Are they going to match the culture and integrity and all of the things that you're going to want? Or are they going to be a good fit for your people? Are you a bunch of sports folks and you're hiring an artist type individual and like all of the nomenclature is going to hit them like a dead balloon. So it's kind of what you're looking for.
Love it. And we have 5 major points that we think about. The first one being understanding the core values. JP, tell us about that.
Yeah, this one's pretty straightforward. If you haven't listened to our core values section, go back. But we talk about you hire, you fire, and you reward on your core values. And so this is the first step is if the person doesn't match up with the culture that you're building from a value standpoint, full stop, don't go any further. It doesn't matter how good they are at the job, doesn't matter how great their resume looks, doesn't matter if you can get them for cheap, don't go any further because they're going to be actively working against what you're trying to build.
Tony, are there like specific cultural-based questions that we use to kind of tease some of this out?
For the core values, I mean, we're going to go through them and have them articulate kind of what they mean to them and like why they fit and like what does that look like for them and how do they apply. So I think it's important that you have your core values really well defined and they're not ambiguous. So like we have, words for ours and then they're very clearly defined after. And what we want to hear is like how they authentically match with those or listen for ways that they don't. Listen for words that they use. So, are they like one of the things that I would listen for in a culture interview is like, are they half glass full or half glass empty type person? Like, is everything a problem? Is every experience they've had an issue? Like, or are they opportunities? So like what type of individual are they? And like listen for those types of words.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the watch outs too, right? It's like green light, red light almost. If there's a few of those non-negotiables, it makes for a really fast interview.
Yeah, I mean, so if someone like an example is if someone brings the proverbial work-life balance comment in, I'm going to dig into that, see what it means to them. It's like, we believe here at Rocket Clicks, we believe in an integrated life. So like, we know there's seasons where we're going to we're going to work more than 40 hours. There's seasons where we're going to work 40 hours. We expect our team to have an integrated life, which means some points during the day, they're not going to be available, but they're going to make that time up, at night or in the morning, or they're going to do what they need to do to get their job done so that they're not holding the team back. So what does work-life balance mean? What it means to me is like, I'm going to start early. I'm going to work out in the middle of the day. I'm going to work after my kids and wife go to bed. Like, that's kind of what it means to me. And it means something different to everybody. So like, what are you like? That's another example of like, when I hear a phrase, I'm going to dig into the phrase.
Our second objective is to ask behavioral questions. JP, tell us more about this.
Yeah. So just as a philosophy, you don't want to give questions where there's an obvious answer. You want to give open-ended questions where the individual kind of has to take you through how they think. To Tony's point of like, you want to listen for what they're telling you and not telling you. And so we have a clearly documented set of questions that we're going to ask in this interview that are, tell me about a time. How do you handle things like this? They're not yes, no questions. They're open ended. And then we have green flags and red flags based on the answer, things that we're listening for. So, for example, we're going to ask how they've handled challenging situations in the past. And one of our core values, to go back to the first point, is accountability. And we're going to listen for, do they take ownership of their role in those hard times and the solution? Or do they say, this was really hard because everybody else around me was terrible and I couldn't count on them and it's all their fault? And so that's not an explicit thing where we ask them, tell us how you handle accountability, but we listen for it in these questions. And so your questions are designed to pull out those core values and other things that you're looking for.
I work too hard. I'm too good looking.
Right. Yeah. Don't ask somebody their strengths and weaknesses. That's a terrible question. Don't even go that route.
Jumping to point number 3, because I think it ties into this and what we were talking about before, which is evaluating their alignment with the current team you have. And Tony touched on this, right? If you're every analogy we use is a sports analogy, and you have someone who's never played sports or never been on a team or hasn't strived to get to some achievement, they're gonna not understand all of the things that we talk about in the business.
One of the things that I would call out here is like, we're a remote organization. And so we're looking for like, do you have experience working virtually, or is all of your experience in an office? If you're going to ask somebody to be coming into an office and they've been doing remote for 10 years, like, what is your expectation of how they're going to integrate with team dynamics? What about working cross functionally with teams? Are they used to having to work with people who they have no authority over, but have responsibility for working with and navigating those dynamics? Are they only used to working within their own silos and teams? Are they used to working in a hierarchical environment versus more of a flat organization? And so what you're looking for here, again, go back to the original point, you're not looking for, do they fit who we are today? You look for, are they going to improve what we are? And so you may look at somebody and go, they don't look anything like the team that I have doing this today. That like, I'm going to add this person to my intake team. They don't look anything like my intake team. And that's actually good because I have a gap on my intake team of this particular, personality or skill set. And I really am excited about putting them in here. And so alignment is a good conversation here. It's not about, do they fit? It's about, is this going to make the whole team better as I bring them in?
I think too, one of the mistakes I've made is I've recruited really good talent in before, but it was for a future state of the org and they couldn't actually operate in the current state of the org. So like, that's something to look for. Like, for example, I hired a very talented call center leader who ran a 5,000 seat call center to run our call center at Sterling when it was 12 people, one supervisor. She had layers and layers of management and people to do research and all these things for her. So when I brought her in, she did not have the support and tools that she was used to having to operate in the role, which made her less effective. Even though she had all the skills I needed long term, she couldn't actually get me to that long term place because she wasn't the right person. So, similarly, I've done that on the IT side, working with someone that hasn't worked in a small business before, hiring them from a large corporation, and their only experience is large corporate. Again, it's going to look very different. So there's a lot of dynamics to think about as it pertains to like, what does your organization look like, and how does this person fit or not fit, and how do you structure questions around those types of things, because that's really what you're looking for in this interview.
Hey, family law firm leaders, my partner, Tony Carls, just released his book where he lays bare our precise blueprint for growing Sterling lawyers from 0 to 17 million. This is the blueprint that we still use daily. And Tony explains it in very simple terms. The truth is, this is not simple to do. Success requires and demands hard work, but if you have the patience and the work ethic to do it, your family law firm will succeed.
Our fourth point, and I think is so important to over communicate here, is to assess their long-term commitment to your firm's vision. At Rocket Clicks, we specialize in helping family law firms grow. And our actual overarching mission is the ability to help kids through this horrible time in their life. And so by working with amazing family attorneys who do a great job, we're actually impacting families kind of all over the country. And communicating that to new hires is extremely important to us because we want them to believe in that mission and to feel like they can play a part of it. JP, is that more in line with kind of what we're talking about here on this point?
Yeah, I think there's probably two things you want to consider here. One is this person going to be excited to put discretionary effort in with your firm because they are so bought in on the mission? I mean, family law is it's a cause driven profession. Like, you're there to make a difference in people's lives, and if you have somebody who's like, yeah, I'm just showing up because I want to do the thing and I have the skill to do the thing, and like that's it, then that's exactly the type of person who's going to punch in, punch out, and they're not concerned about how they impact the folks they're working with, how they impact your clients, how they impact results, and eventually that's going to cause a problem. So that's one thing you're looking for. The other is, and I can't take credit for this. I heard this from a much smarter person than myself, but they were talking about burnout, and they said burnout doesn't come from working too hard. Nobody burns out from like playing video games or watching too many sporting events or going to too many wine and designs or whatever. Like, that's not a burnout. Happens when you don't feel like your work that you're doing is getting you to the place you want to get to. And so you want to look for alignment between their future vision of themselves and the future vision of the firm, because that alignment is going to create opportunities for them to achieve their goals while helping the firm achieve theirs. And so you want to look for that overlap point. And if you're not hearing anything there, it's like, they might be trying to do the job, but eventually, like, they're just going to get tired of it. And so you want the person who's like, Tony talked about integrated life. They work hard at work because working hard at work is actually working on their goals. Like, that's the ideal scenario.
I would say this is so important in family law. This is probably like one of the most important parts of their interview process, because family law is hard. It's hard for the intake team. They're hearing awful stories every single day from multiple people. Typically our intake people talk to 20 to 25 people a day. So they're hearing 20 to 25 bad, not great stories. And like, there's a lot of trauma dumping that they take on. Same with the attorneys. Like, they're dealing with good people at their worst. That's typically what you say in family law. And it's people are very emotional going through this. And like, if that is draining to you, it's not a good fit. And like, leaning into that in this interview process is so important. Same thing with the paralegals. If you're going to get annoyed that someone's anxious about something that's upcoming in court, you're probably not a paralegal for a family law firm. So like, because this is the most important thing that's going to be going on for them, and they're going to be super anxious about it because they don't know what's going to happen to their kids or their house or their job or all the things that are impacted by a divorce. So this is really, really important in this part of the interview process. It's like, why are they passionate about family law? Why do they pick family law to work in? Because you could pick all different types of law to work in. Why family law? It's such a critical question. And like, we've seen it. Our attorneys that aren't passionate about it, they're the ones that quote unquote burn out. They're the ones that have really bad reviews. They're the ones that don't fit in the firm long term, and it impacts your reputation. It impacts the clients, and it's not because they're bad at their job. It's because they don't like this type of work, and like, they're not actually passionate about it. And being passionate here is important. Where working at a big corporate behemoth that sells industrial products, it probably doesn't matter as much, because like, there's not a lot of emotion in buying a widget or a ball bearing, where they're there's a lot of emotion in this space, and like you gotta vet that part of it.
100%. Yeah, more than most other industries. Okay, here, final point is gauge their ability to adapt to your actual culture. So I think that probably starts with really over communicating the culture at your firm. Here's how we do things. Here's how we interact. Here's how we celebrate, and seeing if they can adapt to that.
Yeah, Tony could probably share some of the stories from the Sterling growth journey of like how much things changed over time internally. And like he mentioned earlier, looking for somebody who their personality matches kind of the state of your business. If you're hiring a person who like thrives on stability and you're in a hyper growth phase, uh, right person, wrong time. Right. And the opposite can also be true. If you have somebody who's super driven by like change and improvement, and you're kind of like in a state where you're like, I just kind of want to keep things steady and put some processes in place and standardize. It's like they're going to be a disruption. They're going to cause problems inside your org. Again, not because they're a bad person, but just because what you're looking for from an adaptation standpoint is not aligned. And so again, you're listening for how have they dealt with change in the past? How do they feel about shifting responsibilities? How do they feel about ambiguity? How do they feel about we don't have that today and we're creating it? Do they get excited and they're like, "Oh, I want to be a part of that conversation," or they're like, "Ah, how do you work if you don't have that documented yet?" Like, so you're just again go back to behavioral questions. You're trying to suss out how are they going to deal with the fact that there's an initial change in adapting to your culture, and then your culture is not going to be stagnant. It is going to continue to grow as you grow your firm. How are they going to respond? Is this a 10-year person or is this a 2-year person? And so, like, you're just trying to, read that in the conversation based on their responses.
Yeah, I mean, one of our values over at Sterling is embrace and drive change. And like, we picked that intentionally in this industry because a lot of things have always been done the way they've always been done because that's the way they've always done it. And like, we weren't going to be that firm. We weren't going to be small. We were going to be big. We weren't going to be, we were going to be hourly. We were going to be fixed fee. Like we say we do family law. We really only do divorce and paternity actions and the post judgments related to those two things. Everything else we say no to. Like, we're very focused. And so like we talk a lot about that in the interview process so that we can, like JP said, gauge how are they going to respond to that. Like, oh, I like family law, but I really enjoy adoptions, or I really enjoy, estate planning, which is kind of family law, kind of not family law. So like there's like those definitions are really important.
Yeah, to give a real life example, like we were meeting with an attorney's intake team the other day, and we were talking about like opportunities for improvement in their intake process because they're leaving money on the table, and so we're like, hey, there's all these cool things, and their response to that moment was like, well, we do that because that's how we were trained to do it, which is true but not helpful in that conversation. It is accurate but not useful, and so if you have a person who is going to struggle with change in that moment, when you find an opportunity to grow and improve, they're going to become an impediment in that conversation. And so this is your chance in the cultural interview to go, okay, this is how this person's going to handle situations like this. Given where our business is, given the role we're hiring for, given what we're going to ask, is this a good fit to continue the conversation? Or should we look at other candidates? So you're looking for disqualifications here more than you are qualifications. Looking for like, is there anything which is going to cause a problem later that we can get ahead of now and save our hiring manager time and save our team, 3 to 6 months of struggle.
Well said. At the beginning of this, we said this is a 30 to 40-minute interview, but there's a lot to cover. If you could whittle it down, JP, to one or two things that our audience doesn't want to forget when they're doing a culture type interview, what do you think those would be?
The questions you ask should be calibrated to the type of person that you want, not a specific answer or skill set. And so I really like to think about the questions about, if I receive this question, how am I going to try to game the answer? Like, Tyler, you made the joke about somebody asked you like, what's your greatest weakness? Oh, I work too hard. Right. You want to give time. You want to think about like, how could somebody answer this in a way that is trite, that is glib, that doesn't really tell you anything? Or is this really a question? If I can only ask them 4 questions or 5 questions, is this one that I like, there's almost no way that they can answer this question that doesn't tell me something important about them. And so like spending the time on designing the questions in a way that matches your firm's values is really important. That's probably the thing I'd focus on.
Tony, anything to add there?
No, I'd concur with what JP said. I mean, we use some of these in our final interview process. Like one I like to ask is like, what's one book you've read that you would recommend and why? And like, we believe leaders are learners. I want to know like, what are they going to recommend to me? And like you'll get interviews where they haven't read anything in a while, or they'll make a recommendation and it's like, I've read that book. That's actually not a great book. Or their definition on why is all over the place. Or so they don't have to be like these crazy questions. They can be pretty basic. You know, I think JP, you like to ask a question of like, picture yourself in 5 years, not working with us. What does your life look like? Like, do you have a plan outside of getting this job, or is like this it?
That's such a great point.
So, because like it tells us a lot about how they think and how they're thinking about their career and what they want to do and where they want to go and how is this a stepping stone to the next thing. So there's a lot in questions if you do them strategically.
And as a nugget to add here, all we're talking about is the verbals and the responses. There's also all the nonverbals. And so we literally, like in our guide for our team that does this, we have a list about related to like, do they struggle with the technology of the interview? Because we're a technology-driven company. Are they going to struggle with that? Did they think about the impression they're making with not just how they dress, but like the lighting, the environment, their audio setup? Are they like sitting outside at a coffee shop and their internet's going in and out while they're trying to have the conversation? And then how do they engage with the interviewer? Because everything is sales. This is them selling themselves to you. However they present is how they're going to present to your clients. This is how they're going to be on the phone. This is how they're going to be in the consult room. Like you need to think about, would I trust this person with my clients? And like, they're literally showing you, this is who I am. And saying I heard once is when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And so look for all the nonverbals in this as well, not just what they tell you.
So good. Great nuggets, fellas. We talk about the 3-step interview process and we're going to do a whole series on it. So if you enjoyed the culture interview, just wait until we talk about the operational interview.